too is really the eyes and ears on the ground for all of Palo Alto Network. So we are the special forces unit, if you will, that really responds on the ground to all of our clients' situations. So oftentimes that's helping them in their worst day, everything from responding to breaches to doing the research and analysis on the front end to understand what cyber attackers are doing, and then threat hunting on nodes throughout the world to identify the latest and greatest attack patterns.
Well, there were a number of big cyber attacks this year alone. Why do you think this is, and will they continue to escalate?
Unfortunately, they absolutely will continue. I think you mentioned it, cyber is really the story in terms of a major industry moving forward. The reality is right now, there's a lot of money to be made by attackers in the space. So what's happened is we have major geopolitical activity going on throughout the world, right? Every region from EMEA to certainly in the Asia Pacific rim as well. And so when you have that occurring, you oftentimes behind the scenes have nation state actors continuing to propagate activity even more. And so we're seeing that. What we're also seeing, though, is a combination of cyber criminals becoming more sophisticated. Again, this relates to money being made and the reality that there's a lot of money to be made in the space, but cyber criminals in particular really understand how businesses operate, their level of interconnectivity between B2B type of markets, and they're taking advantage of that as we speak.
So, in 2023, one of the investing drivers here was AI, artificial intelligence, and first time I kind of heard that, I was like, oh boy, you put AI together with criminals. How bad can this get? So how do you guys at Palo Alto Networks, when you talk to your clients, how do you frame out AI as an opportunity, but as also a risk?
Absolutely. So I think with any new advancement in technology, there are pros and there are cons. On the pro side, we have leveraged AI, in particular precision AI, as well as machine learning, to advance our technologies and detect these attacks. And that's been going on for years. But what we've seen over the past year in particular is the advancement of generative AI. And that is obviously enabling a lot more effective human communications. And that's everything from written to verbal, and in some cases, video. So we think from a defender perspective, there is a whole lot of great things that we can leverage from Gen AI, and we're doing that today to advance our analysis, to make sure that we're leveraging our human resources for the most difficult problems and automating as much as possible on the front end for our machines to solve. That said, the attackers are also doing something similarly. What we're seeing today is their use of heavy reliance on the communications piece. So whether that's in crafting spear phishing emails or communications on the written side, or in some cases, whether that's impersonating verbal communications to circumvent employee identity verification so that they can break into an environment. We're seeing the full spectrum.
Talk to us about this new SEC ruling and how it relates to cybersecurity.
Well, so we're seeing increased regulation across the board, right? So what we're looking at from the SEC is an emphasis for reporting from individual organizations. I think the challenges are in terms of timeframes. Oftentimes, the least, and not oftentimes, always, the least at the beginning of an investigation. And so those first 48 to 72 hours to weeks are really where we're identifying a lot of information, and it can be very dynamic, right? It is changing constantly. One thing that I think we're seeing that's really interesting coming from the SEC notification is the fact that attackers have now, and again, we're talking about cyber criminals, not nation state actors, at least not yet, but cyber criminals saying, well, hey, I'm going to use this to my advantage. And if I compromise an organization and they didn't report it yet, I'm going to let the SEC know, and I'm going to file a disclosure notification myself, which is causing, obviously even more headache around the notification challenges.
Wendi, do we know what percentage of cyber crime is by individuals, a couple knuckleheads in the garage versus, nation states?
That's a great question. I'm not sure anyone can answer that completely comprehensively, but I would say a significant amount of the activity, certainly that we see and that our competitors see, is focused on nation state. The difference there is that it often, really runs under the scenes, right? It's not something where these attackers are stealing information and data and then sharing it publicly, right? They are providing it to some sort of analytical capability on the back end so that they can identify information usually targeted against a political objective. That's very different than when you have a cyber criminal who's looking to cause disruption to business, right? We're seeing that today with disruption to retailers, on their busiest period, trying to satisfy orders before the holiday season. And, we see that over the past few months, you saw disruption in Las Vegas in terms of operational impact. People can't check into hotel rooms, They can't place bets, right? So we see really two different objectives there.